to worship. So paramour means someone who's an illicit lover. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. King King Vena was so foolish that he accused the saintly sages of being inexperienced like small children.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, we can't hear Maharaj.
Okay, 1 second.
You can't hear?
Yeah.
Maharaj is not muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah, I can hear Maharaj.
No, I think we're able to hear him. Check Mataji, Maharaj can say that.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. King Vena was so foolish that he accused the saintly sages of being inexperienced like small children. In other words, he was accusing them of not having perfect knowledge. In this way, he could reject their advice and make accusations against them, comparing them to a woman who does not care for her husband, who maintains her, but goes to satisfy a paramour, meaning an illicit person for sense gratification, who does not maintain her. The purpose of this simile is apparent. It is the duty of the Kshatriyas to engage the Brahmanas in different types of religious activities. And the king is supposed to be the maintainer of the Brahmanas. If the Brahmanas do not worship the king, but instead go to the demigods, they are as polluted as unchaste women. Wow. Text 24. Those who, out of gross ignorance, do not worship the king, who is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, experience happiness neither in this world, experience happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. And there's no purport for that verse. So we go to verse 25. You are so much devoted to the demigods, but who are they? Indeed, your affection for these demigods is exactly like the affection of an unchaste woman who neglects her married life and gives all attention to her paramour. So paramour is like an illicit lover. Text 26 and 27. Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominating deity of the earth, Agni, the fire god, Varuna, the lord of waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods who are simply parts and parcels of the king's body. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed the demoniac mentality and presented himself as the supreme personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by great sages and saintly persons. Text 28. King Vena continued, for this reason, O Brahmanas, you should abandon your envy of me, and by your ritualistic activities, you should worship me and offer me all paraphernalia. If you are intelligent, you should know that there is no personality superior to me who can accept the first oblations of all sacrifices. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As stated by Krishna himself throughout the Bhagavad Gita, there is no truth superior to him. King Vena was imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead and was also speaking out of false pride, presenting himself as the Supreme Lord. These are all characteristics of a demoniac person. Text 29. Maitreya Uvacha. The great sage Maitreya continued. Thus the king, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. Well, if you don't take the good advice of holy people, you are condemned. That means that you will be punished by the laws of material nature for ignoring good advice. It's very important to be able to accept good advice. Then you can avoid all unnecessary problems. But the symptom of a nonsense person is not to take seriously the advice of genuine devotees. That will only lead to catastrophe, to very, very, say, bad results. Okay, so text 29 says, the great sage Maitreya continued, thus the king, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. So, when a person receives good advice from an elder and doesn't take it, doesn't accept it, doesn't follow it, they are condemned. That means that they're going to make a lot of mistakes in their life. One time there was a man, he was walking, and he came up to a tree where a man was sitting on the branch of the tree, sawing off the branch. And he said, sir, you know, if you keep sawing off this branch, you'll probably fall down and break your leg or maybe your neck. And the man that was sewing the branch said, "What do you know? You're nonsense. Go away. I'm not going to listen to what you say." And the other man said, "Well, okay, sorry." So as the man kept walking, after a minute or two, he heard this person screaming because the branch fell down and he broke his leg. Well, of course, if you're sitting on a branch sawing it off and sawing it off from where it connects to the trunk of the tree, well, you're crazy because you're going to fall down. But this person was so stupid that he told the person that was giving him some good advice, "You don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing." And all of a sudden, he sawed off the branch, fell down, and broke his leg. That's why people, especially young people, who don't take good advice from elders, from older people, are destined to make many mistakes in their life. For example, we know that on every packet or every pack, every little packet of cigarettes says, "Don't smoke. You will get you get this."
Smoking is injurious to health.
Yes, you get sick, and it's written right on the packet of cigarettes. You'll get cancer. Did people stop smoking? No. Even though on every time they buy that little packet of cigarettes, it's written on every packet of cigarettes that if you smoke, you'll get cancer. Now, does that mean that people are intelligent? No, it means they're stupid. Years ago, there were not warnings like that on cigarette packages, and people would just be smoking. But there were so many people getting cancer by smoking that finally the authorities mandated that on every package or every cigarette box, the cigarette companies have to say that if you smoke, you will get cancer. Did people stop smoking? No. That just shows how dumb people are. Not everybody, but people have not stopped smoking. Oftentimes, teenagers begin to smoke because they think it's cool to smoke. Because they might see a movie and they see someone smoking in the movie, and they think, "Oh wow, this is really cool. If I smoke, I'll be like the movie star." I had uh, uh, the the wife of my brother, one of my brothers. She was a smoker, and one day I asked her. I said, "How did you start smoking?" And she said, "Oh, well, a long time ago, I went to a movie. This is in the 1940s. And I saw, uh, who was it? It was um, some movie star. He was smoking. And she thought it was really cool the way he looked smoking a cigarette. So she started smoking. Now, at that time, big movie stars were paid by the cigarette companies to have them smoke in the movies. You know, they would have the movie stars smoking, and that way, people thought, "Oh, this looks so cool. I'm going to do this too," because the big movie stars were smoking. So that inspired many people to start smoking. Now I think uh, they've regulated movies, and they don't allow people to um, smoke because the mass of people will follow if they see that. Okay, so my sister-in-law, she was a smoker, and it ruined her life. So smoking cigarettes, you don't die right away. You die slowly over a long period of time. Just like my father, he was a smoker. And after smoking 4 packs of cigarettes for like 30, 40 years, he got cancer and he died really horribly, suffering like anything. So it's just like the man who's sitting on the branch of a tree sawing it off. So another man saw him doing that and said, "Sir, excuse me, if you keep sawing that branch, you'll fall down and you might injure yourself." And the man that was sawing off the branch, he was sitting on the branch and sawing off the branch, and where the branch was connected to the trunk of the tree. And the man said, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You just go away and leave me alone. I know what I'm doing." And about 5 minutes later, the branch broke and he broke his leg, fell down. So the symptom of an unintelligent person is they don't take good advice. They think they know everything. And when someone gives them good advice, they criticize that person and they ignore what that person says. That is very, very dangerous, especially for young people, where they get good advice from their parents or from relatives or whatever, and they don't accept the advice. So a young person who accepts the advice of elder people is intelligent, but a young person who doesn't accept good advice from elders is destined to make many mistakes in their life, and they'll regret it. One time on Sankirtan, this one man who was, he looked like a bum. He came up to the devotees, and he was drunk actually, and he stopped us for a minute, and he said, "Hey, listen to what I got to say." So we sort of stopped, and he said, "Don't smoke cigarettes, it's bad for you." But he was smoking a cigarette. So he was trying to give us good advice. Well, it was good advice. Don't smoke cigarettes, it's bad for you. But he himself was smoking a cigarette when he said that. So you see how sometimes people become addicted to bad habits, but they're trying to give good advice to others. But the what you would call uh, uh, strange thing about that is they themselves are not following the advice. So there are a lot of people like that. Sometimes they give good advice to other people, but they don't follow their own good advice. Therefore, when we get good advice from parents or from devotees and sadhus, we should heed or listen to what they say. That will help us avoid a lot of trouble. So, when a person gets good advice, they might not believe it. And because of that, they make mistakes in their life. And later on, they realize, oh my God, I got this good advice. I didn't listen. And look what's happened to me now. I'm suffering terribly. So, the ability to accept good advice means that one is really intelligent and also what you would call God-fearing. Because if you have faith in God or Krishna, then you will take good advice. But if you don't take good advice, that means you don't really have faith in Krishna. You have faith in your own speculations. You're going to have a lot of trouble in life. Okay, so here in this verse today is Canto 4, chapter 14, verse number 27. Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominating deity of the earth, Agni, the fire god, Varuna, the lord of waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods, who are simply parts and parcels of the king's body. Well, there are very few kings today. Why is that? Because they became so corrupted that people kicked them out of their office of being a king. There are a few kings still in some countries, but they usually are just show bottle kings. They have the title of king, but they don't have any big powers. Whereas before, kings were very powerful and everyone listened to what they said. But nowadays, there is democracy. Prabhupada calls it demonocracy. Prabhupada was favorable to having kings. But the problem was that over time, kings became so selfish and falsely proud that they made very, very bad decisions for the people. And finally, the people got so upset, they threw out the kings and started to have elections and electing people to have high positions of power. Now, the problem with that is that you have Sudras electing other Sudras to rule a country. And that's worse than having bad kings. So Srila Prabhupada also was very favorable to having kings if the kings were properly educated and were able to make the right decisions for the country. But so many kings became corrupted and living in, in like engaging in all kinds of sense gratification and so forth, that eventually the kings were thrown out of their position, and they started to have elections and uh, and rejected having kings. Now the problem with elections is that you end up having sudras electing other sudras into positions of power. So that's just as bad as having a bad king. So at one time, kings were educated properly right from birth. So when a young boy was born into a royal family, right from his birth, he'd be trained to become a good king. But over time, that whole process became corrupted also, and they ended up having a lot of bad kings. So they went to the program of having elections. But the problem with elections is oftentimes, not all the time, but most times, you have sudras electing other sudras to take over to have power of the country. So that's another problem. So you see how it's difficult. Like, for example, uh, you had Joe Biden. He was for 40 years he was involved in politics. His whole life was politics. He never had a job. He was always elected, and then he was a politician. He was a terrible politician, but he kept getting elected until he got so sick, and he wasn't even able to think clearly. They finally, told him, "Well, Joe, your time is up. You should stop getting elected." He kept getting elected. People kept voting for him. So finally, he gave up. But there are people that don't give up. So just like here, you see, this Vena. He's a very bad person, but he's powerful and he's a ruler, and he's just creating havoc in the society. So here it says, there are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed the demoniac mentality and presented himself as the supreme personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by great sages and saintly persons. This is a very correct statement. There's so many demons that become dictators. Somehow or other, they take over the political uh, political position in a country, and they create havoc. Just like Hitler, somehow or other, he became the leader of Germany, and in 10 to 11 years, he ruined the whole country, and so many people died. You know. Then there was also besides Hitler, there were other what you would call bullies and dacoits that were able to become elected and completely ruined the country by getting into wars and sending people to fight. See, originally, whenever there was a war, only the kings would fight, not the common men. And when one king defeated the other king, that was it. Everything was finished. Nowadays, the kings, they don't fight. They stay at home, nice and peaceful. And young boys, 19-year-old young boys are fighting and getting killed. And so many people are getting killed. But previously, only the kings would fight. And when one king would defeat the other king, that was it. It was all over. Right. And young boys were not forced to fight in the army and so forth. So you see how culture has changed over a period of time.
Krishna Maharaj,
Yes.
even then the kings had armies, Maharaj, right? They would fight first and then the kings would come in the end. Was it not like that, Maharaj?
Well, no, originally, the only ones that fought were the kings.
I mean, even Mahabharata war,
Yeah, because the Mahabharata
the
war,
kings were right there. Right?
they were fighting from the beginning.
Yeah.
But
They were,
there were still the
But then-
armies.
There was no what?
There were the armies in the Kurukshetra there were.
No armies?
There were armies, right?
Yeah, there were.
So
But wait a minute. Now, usually the armies, when you say there were armies, yeah, there were soldiers, but the kings were leading the charge.
Yes, that's it.
And if the king got killed,
Yeah,
that was it.
that's it.
The war was over.
Somehow, if they can get to the king
yeah.
and then kill the king or whatever, then the war is.
Nowadays, the kings are in their palaces having a good time. And these 16 to 20-year-old boys are out there fighting and killing each other. It's a very bad thing.
That's why the chess game is designed around that. Once the
Because
king
they're
is
now, the so-called politicians are not in the battleground. They're just sitting and just giving orders.
Politicians having a good time, but young people are dying. It's terrible. Look at Hitler. He gets power. And after 11 years of being in power, so many hundreds and thousands of people died in war because of him. Somehow or other, he got power and he caused the death of so many people. So you have to be very careful. Like, for example, when I was a lot younger, I got a letter in the mail that I should come to the United States Army and become a soldier. And this is during the Vietnam War. And I really did not want to become a soldier in the Army. Why? Because number one, I understood I had the intuition that the United States is not going to really fight or not going to really try and win the war.
No.
Now, previously in World War II, the United States won the war, and World War I also, they won the war. They were really determined to win. But when the Korean War happened and other wars after the Korean War, the United States was not really, the leaders, the generals, they did not really want to win the war. And during that period, there were hippies, and the hippies became very prominent. And a lot of young men did not want to go to war. That's why the generals and the army and the politicians, they forced all these hippies to become, soldiers, and they became cannon fodder. Look that word up, cannon fodder.
Maharaj, when you got the letter, were you forced to fight?
What's that?
When you got that letter
Yeah.
from the government,
Yeah.
you were forced. Like you have to fight.
Well, yeah.
Given a choice.
Otherwise, they'll put you in jail. I mean, I got that letter,
Mm.
but what I did when I got that letter, I really did not want to become, involved in war, because a lot of young boys were killed. So I intoxicated myself really badly for a week or two. And when I went in for the, they give you a medical checkup first, right? To see if you're, qualified to fight. I was in such a bad condition. They said, well, we don't want you. And I was so happy when they said that. I just walked away. I really intoxicated myself for about a week. When I went in for the to see the doctor to see if I'm qualified to fight, and they said we don't want you. You go away. But there were other young guys. They were gung ho to be soldiers and to be trained to fight, and a lot of them died. And I definitely did not want to become a soldier. You see, originally, only the kings would fight, and if the king was killed, the war was over. Right? But nowadays, they try and get all these young kids to come and fight. And the kings don't fight anymore. They sit in their offices and in their air-conditioned offices and, prosecute the war. And that's a really bad thing because so many young kids go in and they get killed or they get maimed. And war is a hellish thing. It's horrible, especially now. There's so many very, very dangerous weapons that are being used. When there was cavemen, they only had, clubs or stones, right? And there'd be a fight, and a few people would die, and then the fight is over. Nowadays, they have so many very, very dangerous weapons. You don't kill one or two or three people. At one time, you can kill hundreds of people. An atomic bomb can kill thousands of people. The United States I think the 3 times they threw atomic bombs in Japan. And every time they threw an atomic bomb, it killed thousands and thousands of people. That's the only time that there were atomic bombs that were used. It was used by the United States to defeat the Japanese. They made those bombs to kill the Nazis, but before the bombs were ready, the Nazis had already been defeated. So they didn't use the atomic bomb on Germany. But they did use the atomic bomb on Japan, and it was devastating. So many men died. I think like 100,000 people died when they threw the first atomic bomb. Now they have, oh my God, so many very, very lethal bombs. It's unbelievable. The real, let's say, advancements of in society is the fact that they are building more and more lethal weapons, mass destruction. Now you have atomic bombs, you have nuclear bombs, and they can kill hundreds and thousands of people at one time. So it's very dangerous. That's why it's so dangerous that they try and avoid having big wars. They just have small wars. Like the United States. United States in the Korean War, they didn't really try and win the war. So a lot of young men died. But just a few years before the Korean War, the United States used the nuclear bomb to defeat the enemy nation and Japan, and the war stopped right away. As soon as they threw I think they threw two atomic bombs on Japan. Japan gave up right away. But nowadays, you're having wars where they don't use atomic bombs. Why? Because it's so dangerous to do that. So many people will die. It's just like in the Korean War, after World War II, there was a Korean War. The United States didn't use the atomic bomb. They could have. It would have ended the war right away. And so many young men died. And then, even today, there are wars going on. The United States doesn't use an atomic bomb. They could, and that would stop right away the war. But no, they're just using conventional weapons, and so many people are dying. And the battles, they don't last. Like the Battle of Kurukshetra was only what
18 days.
18 days. Of course, a lot of people died, but it was over really quickly. Now the wars keep going on and on and on. You know, even now you read every day how many people are dying in war between Ukraine and the Russians. Every day.
3 years.
3 years just feels like started on the
It's crazy. So many people are dying. By the way, the Ukraine war was completely unnecessary. It was forced by the United States for the Ukrainians to go to war with Russia. So they became the proxy, let's say, nation. Actually, the war is between Russia and the United States, right? But the United States did not want to lose any soldiers. So somehow or other, they convinced the Ukrainians to fight against the Russians. Right? That whole war is unnecessary, completely unnecessary. It was forced by the United Nations, by the United States. And therefore, the United States trained the army of the Ukrainians, gave them all kinds of weapons. They're still doing it. And so many Ukrainian men have died because the United States, it's just like once there was a man and he wanted to smoke a cigarette. But what he did was he asked another man to hold the cigarette, and he would take puffs from the cigarette, but his fingers would not become colored. If you hold a cigarette in fingers, people that smoke a lot, their fingers become colored, right? So he asked another person to hold a cigarette and he smoked. That's exactly what's happening now, where the United States does not want to have its soldiers go to war. So they convinced the Ukrainians to go to war with Russia. So they're proxies. And so many Ukrainians are dying. But they don't stop the war. How long has that war been going on now?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years. You know how many people have died? It's unbelievable, right?
After Trump administration,
Huh?
after Trump, the war did not stop it.
No, he was supposed to stop. No, they can't stop it because,
But the Ukrainian leader doesn't want to stop.
well, the Ukrainians don't want to stop either. But it's terrible. So many people are dying unnecessarily. Every day you read the newspaper, 14 people died, 100 people died, 50 people died. Every day you look in a newspaper, and it's unnecessary.
120,000 deaths so far, Maharaj,
Wow.
from the Ukraine side.
How many?
120,000.
Wow.
Actually, not just Ukraine. It's 120,000 and 170,000 to 180,000 are injured.
It's a lot of people, right? We get injured. Sometimes that injury makes you like a convalescent for your whole life, right? You can lose a leg, you can lose, an eye. So many things happen in a war. And it's an unnecessary war. The Ukrainians were forced to fight the Russians by the United States. They used the Ukrainians as a proxy army to fight with the Russians. And the United States armed the Ukrainians, trained the Ukrainians, and they're still doing it. And the Ukrainians are dumb enough to, fight like that. And so many Ukrainians have died. Many Ukrainians have run away to avoid fighting. The whole thing is unnecessary. The Ukrainian war was completely unnecessary. The only reason it happened was because the Russians warned the Ukrainians. They said, "Don't join NATO."
That was the only reason why this.
That was it. Yeah. But the Americans pushed the Ukrainians to get into NATO. Now they're still not into NATO, but they've been armed and trained by the United States. So basically, they're the proxy fighters for the United States. You see. It's just like the when I was of the age of being inducted into the army, it was the Korean War, and I just had a feeling in my heart. I thought, see, in World War II, the United States was hell bent in winning the war. They did everything to win. They even used an atomic bomb. Right? After that, they've never used the atomic bomb. In the Korean War, so many American soldiers died. I think 50,000 or more. It was unnecessary. They had just finished the Second World War, where they eventually used the atomic bomb on the Japanese, and right away the Japanese gave up. I think they used 2 atomic bombs, and the Japanese gave up. Now, a couple of years later, you have the Korean War. 55,000 American soldiers died. Why? They never used the atomic bomb. They could have stopped the war right away by using 1 atomic bomb on the Koreans. So you see, there are such situations in which a country goes to war but doesn't want to win it, or they have a reason why they want their young men to go and fight and die. So in the Korean War, the United States did not use the atomic bomb because they wanted to stop the hippie movement in the United States and forcing young men to become soldiers and die. And 55,000 American young men died in the Korean War. And the Korean War came just a few years after the end of World War II, when the United States used an atomic bomb to stop the war with Japan. So they could have done that with the Japanese, with the Koreans also, but they didn't. And 55,000 American men died. Yes.
So atomic bomb is even strong enough to freeze hurricane for some time.
To do what?
Like destroy a hurricane for like a little bit.
Well, they have atomic bombs. Now they have nuclear bombs, which are even worse than the atomic bombs. So the biggest, let's say, progress in the United States is that they have developed, and other countries also have developed, weapons of mass destruction. And those weapons that they have now are so bad, they don't use them. They still can use conventional weapons, because if they use the bigger weapons that they have, it would cause havoc, like irreparable type of damage to the country that would be bombed with nuclear bombs. So they try not to use those big weapons. They use smaller weapons. And that means, like, just like you see in Ukraine, the United States keeps sending weapons to Ukraine to fight against the Russians. And all it does is unnecessarily, it's unending war that's going on. It's like 3 years now that war is going on. And so many people have died, and every day people are dying, and yet they don't stop the war. They could stop it overnight if they wanted to. You know. And how did that war stop? The Ukrainians said, the Russians told the Ukrainians, don't try and join NATO. Remain neutral. But the United States pushed the Ukrainians to join NATO. They still haven't joined NATO, but they were going to. And that's why the Russians, started the war, because Ukraine is right next to Russia. It has a border, right? And the Russians did not want to have the Americans involved in a war that's right next to them, right? But the Ukrainians didn't listen. And what happened? They've been in war now, 3 years? And so many people have died unnecessarily. The whole war is unnecessary. If the Ukrainians said, okay, we're not going to join NATO, we're not going to be the idiots fighting for the proxy army of the United States, and we're going to be neutral, then there would not have been a war. But no, the United States pushed the Ukrainians, armed the Ukrainians, trained the Ukrainians, and now so many of them have died. It's completely unnecessary. Okay, so fortunately, we should not get into wars, because war is hell. It's the worst thing that can happen to a country. So, and even Prabhupada also said once, he said, always avoid a fight as much as you can. Why? Because as soon as you get into a fight, it just causes damage. to one party or both parties. Or in a marriage, don't get into a fight because it can end up in divorce, and children can be completely, let's say, frightened by husband and wife fighting all the time. And it's like a war, but it's more of a civilized war. You fight in the instead of fighting with guns, you fight with lawyers, and lawyers make a lot of money. So I noticed one lady, she got into a fight with her husband. So she filed for divorce. She ended up spending hundreds and thousands of dollars in the divorce. She finally got the divorce, but it ruined her life. And I told her, I said, look, better you just tolerate your problems you have with your husband and don't get a divorce. Don't even try to get a divorce. It's just going to cause a lot of problems for you. She didn't listen to me. And she went bankrupt. It ruined her life. Right? Because when you're in a divorce situation, you get a lawyer. Now, lawyers, they make a lot of money. And you can go on paying them month after month. And after some time, you realize, why did I do this? I could have just said, okay, let's just be separated. You live over there, I'll live over here, and, we won't get into a fight. But no, you get into a divorce situation, you have to get a lawyer, and you're going to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars unnecessarily. See, there's nothing wrong with separation. There is a lot wrong with divorce. So you can say, okay, let's separate. And when you stop smoking marijuana, then we can come back together again, something like that, right? And you can wait, and maybe the person can't stop then, okay. But at least you don't have to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars in a divorce, because divorce, it can cost a lot of money. It causes a lot of what you would call stress for everybody, especially children. Right? Anyway, people don't listen. They just get into these unending fights, as if they're enjoying the fight and losing a lot of money, just making the lawyers rich. Okay, so in the purport to text 27, I'm going to read that again because it's a short purport, but it's very important. It says, there are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed the demoniac mentality and presented himself as the supreme personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by great sages and saintly persons. Yeah, the dumbest demon was Pondraka. Pondraka sent a letter to
Lord Krishna.
huh?
Lord Krishna, right?
Yeah, Lord Krishna. He said, why are you imitating me? You better stop, otherwise I'm going to come and kill you. And when Krishna got that letter, he just started laughing. So when he went to kill Pondraka, he started laughing because Pondraka had somehow or other pasted 2 arms so that he would have 4 arms and look like Lord Vishnu. And it was a joke. And right away, Lord Krishna used his Sudarshan chakra to cut off the head on Drak. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's a funny story. But no, it has a lot of meaning to it. People artificially create wars, and unnecessarily people died. So that's why they started the United Nations. The United Nations was supposed to, after World War II, avoid all wars. So the United Nations, people come together, and the United Nations building in New York, and they discuss things, and it's supposed to stop wars, or avoid having wars, right, through negotiation. Have the wars stopped? No. There's wars going on all over the place. So why is that happening? Actually, who controls wars? Krishna. When there are too many demons, Krishna causes a war where both sides are demons. They come and they kill each other. And it lessens the burden of Bhumi Devi. When you have these gigantic armies and a lot of sinful activity going on, there's going to be a war. To lessen the weight of nonsense people on Bhumi Devi. Bhumi Devi is the goddess of the earth. And when she sees that there's atomic bombs and nuclear bombs and people that, tanks and this and that, there's going to be a war. They have to use those weapons. But when there's a war, you have one side that are demons and the other side of the demons, and they come together and they kill each other. So it lessens the weight of so many demons in the world. And it relieves Bhumi Devi from the weight of all these sinful people. Yes.
Like Krishna Maharaj, but most of the time the demons are not dying here. The innocent people, the front runners in the war, soldiers are dying. How does that reduce the weight for Gomide? They might not be as bad.
Well, let's look at things. Okay, you have one side you have the Russians, and the other side you have the Ukrainians. Both are meat eaters. Both are most of the time engaged in sinful activities. So it's a way to get rid of all those sinful people, to have a war. Who organizes a war? Krishna himself organizes wars so that the weight of all the demons is lessened in society. Usually, most wars are unnecessary. Most wars are unnecessary. But people are hell-bent on having a fight. So who's going to die? Well, there's going to be innocent people that die, but they're actually demons. They're meat eaters, gamblers, and philanders. So it lessens the weight of those people on Bhumi Devi. So there's a war, and one side are demons, the other side are demons. They kill each other. Then the war comes to an end. So many demons died, and now there's a period of peace. And then again, more demons are born. Then there's more war. See? And why is it happening like that? Well, because there's no good education. That's why. When I got my letter to go and join the army, I was like, I'm not going to join the army, because I knew that the United States did not want to win the Korean War. I had that instinct that they're not going to do it because they just finished defeating the Germans and the Japanese. And on the Japanese, they used atomic weapons. But I had a hunch that they were not going to really try and win the war with the Koreans. So I did everything to avoid being inducted into the United States Army. And I did different things, and I was rejected by the medical that I had to take. And I was so happy when that happened. And I never went to war like that. But so many young men went to war. In the Korean War, it was like 50, I think it's 55,000 American soldiers died. Completely unnecessary. So you have to be very careful. There are times where war is necessary and it's legitimate to fight. But nowadays, with all these weapons that are present, actually, the father of the atomic bomb, what was his name? I forget right now. Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer's thought for working on the atomic bomb was that it would be such a lethal weapon that all wars would stop. No one would have war because the weapon was so lethal. But when he saw the United States Army using the atomic bomb on the Japanese, then he regretted tremendously. I mean, he was really upset because the whole idea was to produce a weapon so lethal that it could kill 100,000 people at one time. So he thought that would stop all wars. It didn't stop any war at all. Yeah. So you see, even these big, intelligent, so-called scientists, they make certain theories in their mind, but once they make such weapons, the army generals get their hands on those weapons, and they don't care about what the Oppenheimers and other scientists think. They use the weapons to kill people. So you shouldn't have weapons like that in the first place. It's too dangerous. So having such horrible weapons does not stop war. So what do they do? All right, they won't use the nuclear weapons, but they'll use other weapons like they have these blockbuster bombs. They're not nuclear weapons, but they can kill thousands, not thousands, hundreds of people at one time. So they develop other weapons that are not so dangerous, but they still kill people. Honeyball. Okay. So our takeaway today, it says, there are many demons who think of themselves as the supreme and present themselves as the directors of the sun, moon, and other planets. This is all due to false pride. Similarly, King Vena developed a demoniac mentality and presented himself as the supreme personality of Godhead. Such demons are numerous in this age of Kali, and all of them are condemned by great sages and saintly persons. In the past, there were just a few demons, like Hiranyakashipu, right? Now there's like hundreds of demons. So it's like chaos in the world. So we have to be very careful. if we can spread Krishna consciousness, it could stop wars and so much killing. But we have not been able to do that on a big level. So the wars are continuing. Hare Krishna. Even General Eisenhower, when he was going to retire, he said, "Be very careful of the industrial military complex or industrial military connection, because they will force wars to use their weapons to make money and so forth." He warned the country when he retired, but exactly what he warned has taken place.
So when you say industry, Maharaj, the private sector and
Industrial
for the
military,
for the capitalistic and the military.
yeah, they're going to use the weapons. The greatest, let's say, example is when Lord, who was that? Let's see, who was that? Anyway, the Lord was yeah, in oh jeez, what's the name of it? Anyway, Krishna was hiding his weapons, and his wife said, "You shouldn't hide the weapons. You should get rid of them." And he said, "No, I might have to use them." So she said, "If you don't get rid of the weapons, you will use them over time, and it'll cause a lot of death." So he didn't listen to what his wife said. And he did use his weapons over time. Now, let's analyze that. Is it a good reason? Is it good thinking? Because his wife's argument was, if you have weapons like this, you're going to eventually use them. So you should not have weapons. On the other hand, Krishna did not listen to what his wife said.
Was that Rukmini Devi, Maharaj?
Yeah. He didn't listen. Why? Because he knew that war is inevitable in this world today. But on the other hand, his wife gave somebody, let's say, arguments in favor of pacification. Because if you build such weapons of war, you're eventually going to use them. You're not going to, keep them and just watch them, become obsolete in the go down. But however, the argument to not have weapons of mass destruction was given by Krishna's wife, because she said, if you have weapons like this, you're going to eventually use them. So the question is, like, you have certain countries that are neutral, like Switzerland. Switzerland is always neutral. In World War II, the Swiss did not join the war. They were not on the side of the Germans. They were not on the side of the Europeans. And nothing happened in Switzerland. There was no war in Switzerland. They remained neutral. Also, in World War I, the Turks were on one side. In World War II, the Turks remained neutral. And therefore, they didn't join any fighting, and they avoided killing their own. They avoided having massive losses in the war. So maintaining neutrality is a good thing. That means you save the lives of so many people, and you don't have bombs falling in your country. But some people are hell bent on war, you know. And if you look at the war today between the Russians and the Ukrainians, it's completely unnecessary. All the Russians were saying, don't join NATO. The United States pushed the Ukrainians to prepare them to join NATO, and that's what caused the war. If they remained neutral, nothing would have happened. So we have to be very careful. Just like sometimes a wife will come to me and talk about how she wants to get a divorce from her husband. And I usually tell her, well, listen, it's just going to cause a lot of havoc. So instead of getting a divorce, just separate. Wife can go back and live with her family, her father and mother, right? And take the children with her. And the husband can come and, have days where he can be with the children and wait and see if the husband can, rehabilitate himself and not be violent or whatever. But if you go the other way, say, no, I'm going to get a divorce, you're going to spend a lot of money. It's going to cause a lot of mental, let's say, stress on the children. It's not a good thing to do. There's nothing wrong with separation because you give time to the bad husband to, clean up his act. But if you just have a divorce, it causes a lot of problems, especially for the children. So you have to think, who's going to get hurt the most? It's the children. Okay, so thank you very much. Don't get a divorce. Haribo.